From 40. On the way, a knuckleball. He got it! And here they come.
What's up, y'all? Welcome on into the GoVols247 Podcast. Wes Rucker coming to you from Fort Rucker Studio here on a warm but otherwise pleasant Monday night. God's own Knoxville, Tennessee. How are you? I hope you're well. Hope everything in your life is good. Hope your weekend was a good one. If you're a Tennessee football fan, I'm guessing it was a good weekend for you. The Vols go down to Norman, Oklahoma, take care of business in a I would say maybe not comprehensive way, but took care of it nonetheless. 25-15. Not completely dominant, but also kind of dominant. It's a really good performance. And I think it's interesting that it's kind of healthy in a way. When you get to a point in your program where you can go on the road against a ranked team in their yard, really, really hostile environment, really loud. Everybody's fired up, game days there. And you can never they can never be within single digits of you in the second half. And you can sit here and say, oh, there's some things that could have been better. That's good. That's good. That's where you want to be as a program. And that's where Tennessee has gotten this thing right now. The Vols took care of business comprehensively, completely, maybe not, but nonetheless, a very solid, very, no doubt about it, win over Oklahoma. We got a lot to talk about with that episode or with this episode of the podcast. I think Patrick Brown and I are here, and we're still maybe a little tired. It was a up and back deal there. We had a fun time over the weekend. We're going to talk about that too. Some of the subscribers that we met on
some shout outs to give, Wes.
Yes, we're going to give them. But first, I'm going to say hey to Patrick and to Ben McKee, who's also joining us. Fellas, how are we tonight?
I'm good. I caught up on sleep Sunday night. I don't think I made it to the first quarter of Chiefs Falcons, but I pulled an all-nighter. We got back to the hotel in Oklahoma City West around 2:30, and I had a 6:30 a.m. flight out of Oklahoma City. So I said, you know what, probably not going to get a whole lot of sleep anyway. I'll just watch the DVR of the Bristol night race between that and going to the airport. I actually didn't finish it until I landed in Knoxville. So, but I didn't miss much. But you
were worried that you weren't going to be able to watch all of it before the flight got back.
Yeah, I watched the first stage and a half before going to the airport, and then I watched a lot of it on my phone from that point on. So, but at least Tennessee's got an open date this week, so it's maybe a little bit less stressful or a little bit less hectic than a regular game week, Ben.
Yes, in theory, it certainly will be for you and Wes for other reasons, but you not having to worry too much about football this week, and deservedly so for the both of you. I do not wish anybody.
You got some hoops going up, though, don't you?
I do. I have a basketball media availability tomorrow. We'll have football media on Wednesday. Fall practice starts on Thursday for the baseball team.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've got some content coming down the pike this week in regards to that as well. So certainly the football is the priority once we get back into Arkansas week. But it is for me, because it is my responsibility at the site, to have the day-to-day coverage of basketball and baseball. So a bit of a three-sport season for me about to begin over the next month and a half. But fun times, because right now Tennessee football, basketball, and baseball, all legitimate national championship contenders. It's a great time to be a Tennessee fan, as we all know. And so for us, there's plenty of work, and I'd much rather be doing this work covering good teams than some of the bad teams that we've all had to cover in various sports. So you all deserve a much needed and well-deserved week off after that Oklahoma trip. Y'all had great coverage while y'all were out there, and Ryan and I holding the fort down back home here in Knoxville. I'll be honest, though, in regards to football, Wes, I'm bummed that we already have a bye week. I'm totally in football mode. This football team's a lot of fun, and I'm just really curious to see how this season is going to pan out, because I think they've got a chance to do some really, really great things this year. And it's just kind of a bummer for me that we don't have any Tennessee football to digest and learn about and talk about this weekend, because it's a fun team to cover right now. And I think it's going to be a really fun season. So I do hate from an entertainment perspective, from a work perspective, we don't have Tennessee football this week. But I do think, Wes, I'm sure this is something we'll talk about maybe briefly here on this podcast and later on in the week. But although I don't like that it's an open week, I do think Tennessee's 2 open weeks fall at the right time. Tennessee's overall health pretty good right now, Wes, but they do need to get a position like the tackle position healthier and sorted out. And that comes at a perfect time with a funky road trip to Arkansas that you should still handle business, and then 2 massive home games against Florida and Alabama, and then another bye week to rest up for the home stretch. So I hate open weeks just because I want football, but I do think Tennessee's 2 open weeks fall at the right time for Tennessee this year.
Yeah, I feel really bad now because Ben just mentioned how many things he's covering this week, and I'm going to be in London.
don't feel bad for him. He went to Morgan Wallen on Sunday night, so he got to see Peyton Manning in full Tennessee uniform.
Hey, I saw Nico in a football stadium this weekend. I saw Brew McCoy in a football stadium this weekend. That was really cool. Nealon was on fire. It's certainly Friday night. We saw a lot of the clips on Friday night during the first show, and I can attest the show was terrific. Whether you like Morgan Wallen's music or not, I do love me some Morgan Wallen music. But just the atmosphere, it felt like a Tennessee home football game. The fans were rowdy. Nealon looked awesome with the sun setting. Just the different features in the stadium with the sun setting on it. It looked awesome. All the different Tennessee chants broke out. Rocky Top broke out. It was an awesome experience. And you kind of threaded the perfect needle there, of course, with Morgan Wallen being from Knoxville, being from East Tennessee, having several songs that he mentions the Vols in. And it's on the heels of the national championship, and you have those ties as well. But it is something that I'd like to see Tennessee do more of in the future. Maybe not during the season, but in the off season, having some more stadium concerts, because it was awesome on Sunday night. It was an expensive ticket, and it was worth every penny.
They should have had, but they should have had Josh Josephs and I don't know, Jermod McCoy come out. I mean,
I was about to say the defense.
This is a defensive program now. I know people say like, "Oh, this is a baseball school." Tennessee's a defensive program now, right? After what we saw on Saturday night. Wes.
No kidding, yeah. And I think it was bold of them to, you can only have the concert during one of the bye weeks, right? So or open dates. Coaches hate the word bye week. They say it's an open date. We're still working.
ESPN says idle.
Yeah, idle.
I hate bye weeks too. For the record,
it's an idle week. So they're just so idle. So now if you're during that week and you pull up at a red light, your car turns off. It's it's idling. It's one of those deals. I think it's neat that they did it, and it's also like kind of bold in a way that what if that Oklahoma trip hadn't gone very well, and then Sunday night you're like, bring Tony back out. Hey guys, remember that? That was still kind of awesome. Where's Zakai Ziegler? What's he up to right now? I mean, but Tennessee took care of business, and I feel like now, like when I'll be out of town or out of the country all week, I'll be like, all right, everything's good. Yeah, everybody's happy. Come back, everything's gonna, knock on wood, still be in one place. That's never a sure thing. So but they are, as Pat said, a defensive team right now. And Josh Heupel coached a very defensive-minded game, and I liked it. Like, don't get me wrong. If you ask me, would you rather watch a 52-42 game every week or a 25-15 game every week? I think the 52-42 game is a little more fun. I think not everybody. There's defensive coordinators and coaches and players like, hey, come on now, 7-3, 6-3 is a fun game. Yeah, there's different ways to have a fun game, but for me, I kind of like the high scoring ones, but that was a very, very mature coaching performance from Josh Heupel, and I was a little surprised, not shocked, because people get emotional during games and everything, and fans, but you go back and look through some of the stuff on our board and some of the stuff on social media and all that good stuff, and I was a little surprised that people were a little bit bummed about the conservative approach to that game, because for me, that was a coach who naturally is set to 11. Like, this is a dude who, not intentionally, but kind of intentionally, he'll onside kick in the first quarter when he's up 30-0. He is like a go for your throat kind of coach. And he's used to coaching games where his team's got to score 40 points to feel pretty good about winning. He saw the lay of the land in that game. By the second quarter, it was pretty obvious that Oklahoma was not going to do a lot offensively unless Tennessee gave them something. And Tennessee had a lead, was it 22-3, I think, going into the fourth quarter. And so he was basically looking at the clock, running the ball, taking his medicine. His quarterback is in there with two backup offensive tackles, who one especially did not have a great night. He struggled for a lot of the night. It is what it is. Oklahoma's got some really good defensive players. You'd like to just run the ball, run the clock. Don't get your quarterback hurt. Don't let him run unless he needs to, and get out of there. I mean, you saw in that game, he took two pretty nasty hits in the first half and fumbled, and those can go badly. So he saw in a game where, by the way, this was his homecoming, right? I mean, this was a game that a lot of eyes on him. He left there acrimoniously, but he loves that place and he loves the people there. Most of them, he loves them, not all of them, but most of them. And he kind of like, he wanted to spit in the face a little bit, wanted to win the game. There's no doubt. And if he could have, scored 50 points, he would have. But he saw the way that game was going, Pat, and he wanted to win that game. And I think that's worthy of credit. I mean, I think I credit the guy for that. That was a mature coaching performance.
Yeah, Wes, he maybe a younger, more brash Josh Heupel would have said, "Hey, this team can't score. I'm going to try to tack on some touchdowns here." But it's a evolution of a coach, and this is something that Josh Pay talked about too on his show on Sunday night. Is just that he sort of Heupel sort of recognized what kind of game it was and said, "Hey, we're going to play it this way." And I think he probably saw in the first half that, they did call a couple of pass plays, didn't pick up a blitz. One of those backup tackles got beat one-on-one, and it led to 2 turnovers. And it just so happened that Tennessee's defense was able to get the football right back. I don't think he wanted to see what would happen at a third time if Oklahoma got a turnover and started in plus territory. That offense was not doing anything. And maybe he wanted to, particularly not give Oklahoma anything easy those first few drives with the backup quarterback, Michael Hawkins Jr. in the game, just because, you're still kind of adjusting. You're still kind of figuring out maybe your defensive game plan and your calls. But I agree with it. I know a lot of fans were kind of upset about the offense. It's conservative. This looks like Philip Fulmer. Heupel's probably got close to as many wins through 40 whatever games as Heupel does. So, that approach can win. I've seen people compare it to kind of this is sort of the reverse of the 2022 Georgia game where, that game was 27-13 on the scoreboard, but no one left saying, "Hey, that was a 2-score game." I mean, that was a game that Georgia was really in control of at a very early point. And in this one, the final score was to use sort of a term from across the pond. It was flattering to Oklahoma because Tennessee was bossing it for 3.5 quarters. And it never really felt once Tennessee, particularly once they scored right before half, it was like 19-3. They got to get 2 touchdowns, 2-point conversions. That seems like a lot for an offense that has gone nowhere. And through 3 quarters, Oklahoma, I think, had 98 yards of offense. So, and the way your defense was playing, you want to protect them. You want to let them carry you home. So Tennessee ended up, I think, throwing 10 passes in the second half, 34 plays. And I think they ran off like 17 minutes. So they did what they wanted to do. They were able to run a couple times and convert some third downs with some throws to the tight end. And is Heupel going to do this every game? No, there's going to be games where he's going to have to be more aggressive. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be games where he's going to feel like he has to keep the foot on the gas on offense because, maybe they're playing a better offense that can keep up. I bring up that 2022 Georgia game. That comparison doesn't quite fly because Tennessee's offense that season was number 1 in the country. I mean, they could put up bunches and quickly. So Georgia was just run the clock out much more than just let the game, let the defense win it out. They were trying to limit possessions because they were up 27-6, I think, at that point. So, and I think Adam Sparks from the Knoxville News Sentinel had a great analogy talking about some of the fan reaction. He says he ate wings for dinner yesterday, but that doesn't mean he doesn't like tacos or pizza or turkey and dressing. It's just different situations call for different coaching and different managements of the game. And, we've heard Heupel say, every game unfolds differently, and you could play a game 10 times and it's going to go differently. So that means you have to manage it differently. And I thought he was managing even the end of the first half well, because he was slowing it down the last 5 minutes. I mean, they almost treated that drive like a 4-minute drive where they're just trying to leave Oklahoma a lot of time. They got the touchdown. I think Heupel even could have gotten more aggressive and called timeouts on that Oklahoma drive right before half, but I think he got his touchdown and said, I'm good. We're getting the ball. They're not going to go anywhere here. So, let's not go there. So, yeah, I mean, I wrote this in the report card that was on the site on Monday, but it's an evolution of a head coach like we've talked about. It's also a program that's matured a lot to where they can win games with defense now. And I think that's something that I brought up and we've talked about on previous podcasts, is that Tennessee now can win games in a lot of different ways. And, they were able to win this one with defense. They're probably going to need one later in the season where they have to go win one with offense. And when you have a complimentary football team and a complimentary program that you've built through recruiting and development, and, you're in your 4th year under Tim Banks, this is, the same offensive system. You've got a lot of continuity. You've got a team that can do that and pick up each other. And, that's something that Arion Carter talked about after the game, was just, or maybe it was Josh Joseph's, when the offense isn't, they need help, the defense wants to go pick up the slack and get the ball out for them. And Nico said after the game that, the defense is playing like that, it makes him want to have the offense play like that. So they've got a good thing going over there. And Ben, they just need to, that's why, as you pointed out, this has a chance to be a special season. I think because Tennessee, they can probably go win a shootout. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. They made some big plays in the past game on Saturday night. And if they need to and win a game on defense, they can. I think this was Heupel's second game that he's won without scoring 30 points, A&M last season being the other one. So, and he kind of coached that game the same way. So, and leaned on the defense and managed it that way. So those are good signs for Tennessee coming out of this game and moving forward the rest of the season.
Absolutely. And I'm glad Wes said the word medicine a couple of minutes ago, because on the post-game podcast that Ryan and myself recorded, encourage you to go check that out if you happen to miss that late, technically early Sunday morning, but we'll say late Saturday night. But I likened it to taking medicine. It's you don't necessarily like drinking the cough syrup in the moment, swallowing the cough syrup in the moment, but it's what's best for you, and it should help you down the road. And I thought Josh Heupel did a great job of managing that game in the second half. And something that we will need to expound on in this podcast, maybe in the second segment, is the tackle situation, because I do believe that this has the chance to be a very special season for Tennessee. I also, on the other hand, think it's fair to say, and it is a concern of mine, I think it's a fair concern that I think the tackle situation could be one that derails what could be a special season as well. So we can get into that tackle conversation a little more in depth later on. But given the tackle situation in that particular game, you had already seen Nico take some big hits, and because of the big hits, turn the football over because of the fumbles early on in that game. And the only way Oklahoma was going to climb back into that game was if Tennessee gave them a splash play out of the ordinary. If there would have been a scoop and score, or if there would have been a pick six like we saw against NC State, because Nico's being pressured, he gets hit, the ball goes flying up into the air, and Oklahoma picks it off and returns it for a touchdown. That was the only way Oklahoma was going to win that football game. They were not scoring more than 22 points against that Tennessee defense. They just weren't. So if you knew that that's what it was going to take to beat a top 15 team on the road in that environment, why would you not do what Josh Heupel did? It may not have been the most entertaining, but that's okay, because all that matters is the win. And I think that there needs to be some perspective. And I think fans were very, very happy with the win on Saturday night, obviously. But there were some comments here and there about being conservative.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. It surprised me a little.
Right. So I don't want to make it bigger than what it was, but there was certainly a conversation out there and an annoyance. And I think that's come back down to earth as we've gotten away from Saturday and people kind of it sank in and realize that, okay, Josh Heupel and this coaching staff managed it the way that they needed to manage it. And it may not have been the most entertaining product, but I thought they did the right thing on Saturday night with how they leaned on the defense to carry that game home. And the last and other comparison I made on Saturday night, it was kind of like Floyd and Money Mayweather, watching him fight. It's not the most entertaining brand of boxing, but he's holding the championship belt every time he walks out to a ring. And this is the first time Tennessee has beaten a top 15 opponent on the road since Jason Swain was playing, and Jason Swain is as old as dirt, and that's a long time. So
leather helmet.
There needs to be some perspective as well. Was it maybe frustrating at times? Sure. But was it the right call by the coaching staff to manage the game in the second half the way they did? Absolutely, because all that matters is going into that venue in that environment and walking out of there with a win to keep your season on track. And players shouldn't think like this, obviously, but Tennessee should be 6-0 going into that Alabama game. And part of being 6-0 going into that Alabama game was winning at Oklahoma by any means necessary. And Tennessee won by any means necessary. And that defensive performance was an elite defensive performance. And it should not be, nothing should be taken away from that just because maybe the play calling was rightfully conservative in the second half.
Yeah, I wonder if, some of these fans also, like after another Sunday of watching the Titans, some of them were like, it's not so bad. Saturday was pretty good. Saturday was a good day. Sunday sucked again, but that Saturday, that 25 points on the road against a good defense, that's pretty good. I think you guys did pretty well. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the stat about the last time a ranked, went over a top 15 team on the road. That was also the first time Oklahoma had lost by double digits at home since 2016. Like they did a lot of
they don't lose a lot at home. I mean,
No.
I think the stat was like 143-13
Yep.
since 99, since Bob Stoops got there. Again, as we talked about last week, they don't play Nebraska, they play Texas and Dallas. So, they're beating the Kansas States and the Iowa States and
They'd
the
love to play Nebraska.
Texas Techs of the world coming to Norman. So I don't know. And this, I think the last time they played a ranked non-conference team at home was Ohio State in 2016, and Ohio State beat them pretty good. So, but yeah,
we'll learn by the end of the season. I mean, obviously the point of, you see if you're watching on YouTube, you see the logo in the corner of the screen. It's a checkerboard. You see this is a Tennessee podcast, right? But we'll know by the end of the season, like, all right, NC State fraud. That's fine. We've seen a couple more games now. That team's just not very good. And Oklahoma, we'll see. I think there is a chance that defense by the end of the season is still going to have a good reputation. I think it's a good defense. I think it's not like elite athletically on the back end necessarily, but it's a very structurally sound, aggressive, smart defense. They do a lot of good stuff. And some of the stuff Tennessee did was not necessarily bad Tennessee. It was good Oklahoma. They've got some good players over there. And offensively, they got to figure some stuff out. We'll see if the quarterback change helps them. They go to Auburn this week, whatever. My point was, or is, if I can make it in time, is I think we'll know by the end of the season how much that win meant. But for right now, it looks pretty good. I think Oklahoma, I would not call it a great team. I would still call it a pretty good team. It's got one of the most disgusting schedules I've ever seen, and it could be a pretty decent team that goes 5-7 or 6-6. But it's never easy to go to Norman and win. It's just not. And Tennessee was able to do that, and without, by kind of, I don't know, I'm not going to call it parking the bus, but by handling that game in the way you did, you were able to take some things that look like a concern and kind of kick them down the can to this week and get some things cleaned up, get some guys healthy. You didn't have to show a lot of stuff. Like, remember Tennessee this season, the first couple of weeks, you were talking about, a lot of that 12 personnel, a lot of that, then going 4 wide the next week a little bit, like mixing up some stuff, showing an onside kick. They were putting stuff on film, and this game someone who watches the line of scrimmage very closely maybe saw some stuff. I don't know. Didn't look like they were really opening up anything this week. They were just kind of running their stuff and took a couple shot plays. A couple of them worked, a couple of them didn't. But they just didn't have to show a lot in the second half. I felt like there was a lot still left in the bag that they thought they might have to use in that game, and they didn't. And so cool.
Well, they Heupel talked about after game West that they Oklahoma came out and something not what they were expecting, and they needed a little bit to adjust, both in terms of on the sideline between drives. Okay, here's what we're going to do, and also the players to what they were seeing, probably communicating that back. Just from up top, it looked like it was a little bit like how Missouri played them last year, where it was a 3-man front, kind of 2 linebackers, and then they kind of had like 2 overhangs who were kind of over the slot, but not really. And
it's a smart defense. It's a smart.
Those guys were kind of cheating towards the box to add numbers against the run, but then if Nico pulled the mesh, they were bailing out into a zone. So, and I think you saw that on the first play, because I think Nico threw that ball to Brazel out wide, and there were 3 guys there that against 1 blocker, and they had, I think, 5 in the box. But and I think you saw it on that first drive too, on that 3rd down, where they had a free guy come in off the edge. So it took them a while to adjust and hit some things, but then they were able to, they overloaded one side and got Brew McCoy isolated on the backside for that big play, and then on the touchdown to Dante Thornton, they were able to draw the safety in. They also overloaded to the boundary as well. So Tennessee's able to do that within their offense to kind of dictate how the defense lines up and sort of create one-on-ones and create space. But yeah, I mean, we saw some 12 personnel too. They maybe didn't do, we saw some orbit motion stuff with Squirrel White that didn't really kind of work either.
Yeah, he had a quiet.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to put it is they probably put the restrictor plate on the offense in the second half. But going back to playing that well on the road, I mean, that game had so many chances to start teetering towards kind of the road performances we've seen. But that's the other part of how this program is now kind of a big boy grown up program, is that I think they had 1 false start. Now they had 10 penalties, but you go 2 years ago to Georgia, they had like 6-7 false starts. That's been a problem. But the biggest thing I thought was, and I wrote this on Friday, just some of those road losses in like hostile, loud environments, not the Kentuckys and Vanderbilts and 2021 Missouri of the world. Things would just snowball. I mean, remember the first half at Florida last season, guys? I mean, 26 points in a row. Second half at Alabama, 27 in a row. It was a slow snowball at Missouri, but all of those games, all of those losses had just runs from the other team where Tennessee lost the momentum and just could not get it back. Whereas there were times in this game where the momentum could have teetered after a couple of those turnovers. They were in bad spots. Oklahoma's starting at the 5, Oklahoma's starting at the 40. And Tennessee's able to make a play by the defense to get it back. And even little things like driving out from, the shadow of your own goal line to flip the field, and Jackson Ross pins him deep, and you get a safety out of it. Little things like that. I mean, those are
using Deshaun Bishop in some of those situations too. Like,
right. I mean,
him, like, here you go.
Yeah, they were able to capitalize on the lateral turnover and turn that into a touchdown. So that was what was different about this performance, I think, from Tennessee. That's really encouraging, because you're still going to go to Georgia late in the season. You still got to go to Arkansas in a couple weeks, and
gonna be loud.
If the Razorback, especially if they beat A&M, which they never do, they could be a top 25 team, and obviously that crowd will be pretty revved up for that one, a night game as they announced on Monday. But that was the other part of this performance to me, was there was kind of how Heupel managed it. There was obviously the defense that was outstanding, particularly on the defensive line. But just the overall composure of the team. I mean, they handled it with such poise, and were able to sort of control the game throughout. That was the most impressive thing, Ben, was that to me that, they had some adversity too. They had some turnovers. The crowd got loud a few times. There was a slow start on offense, but they were able to kind of stick to it. The run game started off really slow, but then Wes, as you mentioned, they had the Bishop drive where he kind of ran them out from behind their own goal post. Obviously, the Dylan Sampson drive where he got the ball 8 straight times, I think was an impressive series, impressive sequence. And that was just the big takeaway for me, because that's something that that you're going to need as you go through the season, whether whether it's Arkansas in 2 weeks, whether it's Georgia, whether you end up having to go on the road in the playoffs if you get there. you're going to need that kind of composure and poise and maturity. And we saw that from Tennessee. And the stadium was pretty loud, Wes. It was a pretty lively campus. Walking to the stadium. It was a big occasion. It felt like a big occasion, even driving around campus Friday with all the people that were kind of milling around. So, and everything being set up and game day being there. It was a big occasion. And
the heat didn't bother them. They stayed hydrated. Like,
right.
It was 100 degrees that day.
It
was 100 degrees that day.
We've seen Tennessee maybe get some stage fright under Heupel and the staff, but we didn't see any of that on Saturday night.
No, not at all. They were prepared and ready for that football game. They made adjustments on the fly. I think the offense had a pretty solid performance. 25 points, 345 yards against that defense that I think is really good. And like Wes talked about, in that environment, I think it's a solid day at the office with plenty to work on going forward. I talked about this on our postgame pod as well. And we talked about this after NC State, I guess me, Wes, and Ryan there in the press box at Bank of America Stadium, that it felt very Pittsburgh 2022-ish, to where the offense is still just working to hit its stride. It's the first month of the season. It's still early in the season. They're still building and climbing towards the peak. They are still trying to hit their stride. And they've played well to start the year, but they're by no means playing perfect football, and that is perfectly okay because the defense is supposed to be ahead of the offense. Just about every team in the country, I guarantee you their defense is ahead of their offense. But then even with this defense, just don't beat yourself. Just don't shoot yourself in the foot. You have a defense that can go out and win you a national championship. I really believe that this is a national championship winning caliber defense, at least what we've seen up until this point. And I feel even better saying that coming out of the Oklahoma game because of the way Jamal McCoy and Ricky Gibson played. Ricky Gibson did have the one flag for pass interference, but outside of that, especially Jamal McCoy made a ton of great plays. McCoy obviously had the interception. The PFF grades reflect his performance as well. But it was like, even when McCoy didn't pick off a pass or whatever, every time he threw or they threw towards McCoy or Gibson's guy, they were on their hip every single time. And I thought that was super encouraging. So I really do believe that this is a championship caliber defense. So for the offense, it's just about building with each month, with each game. And it felt kind of Pittsburghish in 2022 to me. And I thought the running game played pretty well, Wes. Bishop, Sampson, very impressed by their performances. And I thought Nico played well as well. The 13 of 21, I don't think does him much justice. I thought he played better than what the 13 for 21 looks like. I thought he was much more efficient than 13 for 21. I think it was 194, 1 touchdown, 0 turnovers. I thought he had a really good night. Tennessee's biggest issue offensively was the tackle position. When Tennessee got in trouble offensively, it was because the tackle position put them in bad situations, and that is what led to Josh Heupel managing the game the way that he did in the second half and down the stretch. And my last thought here, Wes, is that I thought it was a great sign to see Josh Heupel manage that game the way that he did and be perfectly content with leaning on the defense. I thought he just did a phenomenal job managing that game. Of course, everybody views him as this great offensive mind, which he is, but I think he's really developed into a great CEO and just game manager as well. And so much, by the way, another kind of random thought, so much for the whole can't have an elite defense with this offense. Josh Heupel, Tim Banks, they are debunking that theory this offseason. When you have talent, when you have depth, you can have an elite defense with this offense. And Josh Heupel, he can still go tempo whenever he wants to, but he's also showing that he is willing to throttle it back some and lean on the defense when the defense is there to lean on, which Tennessee obviously has this season.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say before we go to break here is I think I don't know that this played into any of the play calling or any of the stuff we saw offensively, because I think mostly he was just reading the game and the situation and doing that well. I had serious concerns about the condition of that field if I'm being honest. And
It's terrible.
Obviously there was the one Oklahoma player who had the very serious injury. Hope he's doing all right. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but something broke there. It just didn't look good. And Tennessee's players immediately like, hey, get the hell out of here. This is real. This isn't Dejoun Terry going down again after a first down. This is a real thing. Get out here. And it also like I don't know if these two things are connected. It smelled really bad down there, like on the field. And I don't know. It's like, did they paint this field? Like something down here. It's weird because like normally we
I'm surprised you haven't blamed it on the lack of topographical changes in the state of Oklahoma.
I mean, it's flat, dude. It's flat. It's unbelievably flat. But I think inside joke there. But I think if I don't know, like when you go down,
make it sound like we had a bonding trip.
Well, yeah, we've bonded for years. We're tied at the hip. We think everything's the same all the time. But
do you really bond if your coworker refuses to pick you up from the airport?
That's true. I did have to get an Uber to the hotel. That was pretty good. But I do think in all seriousness, like we're down there on the field, and we're used to things not smelling good. Like you ever been in a locker room after a game or near it? Doesn't smell good. Football game, there's like 130 stinky people in there. It's not a pleasant place, maybe unless you're a player or coach who won the game. So we're used to things like, oh, that doesn't smell good. But like that field down there, I had never smelled that before. I was like, did they paint this thing? Like this reeks.
The broadcast talked about at one point their decision on whether or not to mow the grass and felt like I believe it was Chris Fowler said that he was kind of surprised at how tall the grass was.
Well, because the week before there was places that didn't have a lot of grass on that field.
It was very sandy as well.
Yeah, and there were a couple guys going down who just they lost their footing. I mean, you can change cleats, you can try to do things with spat and other things, but like, dude, if I had a knee or ankle injury or something that I was carrying, I don't know if I'd have wanted to play on that field. I mean, you plant and that sucker's gone, and then all of a sudden the sprain turns into a tear, and it's not a good situation. So that may have played, and both teams had to play on it. But that to me was like, if you're not, you might need to look into getting turf. This is how it's going to be. Like you got to get that thing fixed because it wasn't good. And I think that also led to some interesting things that happened during the game. So
the field and the press box Wi-Fi, not quite up to SEC stuff at Oklahoma.
Yeah. The Wi-Fi was down there on the field for the final 5 minutes. My phone kept going into SOS mode, and I was like, "What's happening here?" Like, I felt like Tom Hanks in Castaway. Like, it's all I get. Like,
I worked most of the game off my hotspot, so I was having all sorts of issues with the Wi-Fi before the game, and then I clicked over to my hotspot and didn't.
And getting progressively angrier.
I don't get angry. I don't know what you're talking about.
Even before the game started, I almost like started sending texts to people like, "Guys, I think Patrick's going to explode. I think this human being next to me, I think he's actually like spontaneously combust. Like I don't even want to make a joke right now. If I like, hey, this Wi-Fi is looking really good, I was like, I might get punched. Like it was great because we're all different, right? There's moments like that where things just start building, and you're like, I need this thing to work, or
I guess
I'll lose it.
I guess we could put bad Wi-Fi up there with bad traffic for me as things that just get me irrationally mad.
There's
a lot of other things. I don't know if you should be throwing stones here, Wes, because there's a lot of things that are irrational that make you mad. Like, should we talk about the black cleats and the black socks that Tennessee was wearing?
It's horrible. It's horrible.
No, it's not. It looks BA on the road.
It makes it look tougher. Look, you're talking to a guy who on NCAA football back in the day,
no black cleats.
I would give all my guys black tape with their black socks because it looked awesome. That's what I would do.
No black in the uniform, no black in the cleats. It's a rule in baseball and football. It should be a rule. But anyways, but yeah, you're right. There are a lot of dumb things that make me angry. But if you're a Tennessee football fan, there's a lot of things that make you happy right now. And we'll discuss more of those things in the second segment. Also, we will
shout outs to give. Yes,
shout outs to give. And Ben mentioned it. I think we need to talk about it. It's good. That tackle situation, that there's some things to work on there and some things to be concerned about there. So that we'll talk about that. We'll give the shout outs. We'll discuss some other things that are fun, and then we'll get out of here. But before we do that, let's step away. We are definitely overdue for a break here to go pay some bills, listen to products, services, in-house ads, etc. Good old capitalism at work. And we'll be right back after that here on the GoVols247 Podcast. #ad. Welcome back to the GoVols247 Podcast, brought to you by whatever products, services, and in-house ads you just heard a moment ago. During that commercial break, Wes Rucker coming to you from Fort Rucker Studio. Still trying to work on some of this new software that we're dealing with. I don't think the audio quality is quite what I'd like it to be just yet, making this transition over to video and some other, adding that into the arsenal. But hey, there's a lot of things, that we're trying to do here. And the first few times you do something, there's always stuff that you can look at and go, hey, we need to be better at this. Just like a football team, right? Tennessee's offense right now. Hey, a couple of things that you'd like to tweak and get better, get where you want to be by the end of the season. So I hope we do that. I hope that you're doing well still. By the way, just quickly here, but before we get on to the second segment, would like to do what we always do. Take a second to remind you, request, please go in there, rate and review and subscribe to this podcast, no matter where you're getting it. Anywhere you can cast a fine pod, you can go get this podcast, and it helps us out so much. We do this for free. We'd like to keep doing it for free. If we have our pick, or if we have our druthers, as Philip Fulmer liked to say a lot, then we always will do it for free. But we'll see. We can't make promises there. We want to. But point is, if you go rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast, that helps us do that. That helps get more people out there. That helps everything. That gets the ball rolling downhill. Y'all have been great at that. Really, even a couple people that we met on Friday night talked about how, they came across the podcast and how people told them about it. And we love this stuff. This is what it's great. And if you've already left a review or have not, even if you haven't, but even if you have, go in there, leave a fresh one. That really helps us out tremendously with the algorithms and everything. And tell Tennessee fans in your life, tell people that tell people that that are fans of a team Tennessee's playing that week. Tell them about this podcast. Any way that you can tell people about this, please do that. Please rate, review, subscribe. Please, if you're already doing all that stuff, thank you so much. We love you. If not,
I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
See, even right there, hit the button, didn't play right. This is what we're dealing with right now. This is you're seeing the rough draft of this, right?
It played fine on my end, Wes. You might be seeing ghosts like Jackson Arnold was on Saturday night.
Yeah, maybe so.
But he saw actual dudes, not just ghosts.
Yes, he did. And that was one of those moments where it's going to sound mean.
Jackson Arnold to the bench, and he's not going to start against Auburn. So they very well may have ended up sending him to wherever he's going to play next season.
Like, there were times, and I really, really, really am not trying to be, but we assess things, right? That's part of our job. And that felt like one of those kind of Garantano meltdowns during that game. Like, it felt like it was just coming apart. And now he's not starting this week. I mean, Venables after the game was saying, yeah, we don't have any backwards RPOs. So yeah, that pass needs to be thrown forward. And Tennessee's defense can do that to you now. That's a good defense. But Hawkins came in there and did some things, but even then, like, the game was different at that point. So, man, that Arnold's got talent. You watch the warm-ups, that kid can spin it. He's athletic. He can run. Just hadn't come together yet, but Tennessee broke him for a while.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think, as NC State was just getting dump trucked by Clemson, that after struggling with La Tech, that Tennessee broke them. I mean, and we'll see, but Tennessee might have broken Oklahoma too. They got to go to Auburn, though. So if you're the betting kind, Ben, take the under.
Yeah. We need Ryan Callahan on this podcast if we're going to be talking about gambling. If we're talking about gambling,
we don't need Ryan on this podcast.
If you're talking recruiting or gambling, Ryan can contribute. If it's anything else in this world, no. But just in those two things, he can give you some insight. Oh, I'm sorry, grilled chicken sandwiches. That's the third thing, because that no one has been to more restaurants and sampled their grilled chicken sandwich than Ryan Callahan. I bet you could take him to like the canals of Venice, and he would be like, "What's your finest grilled chicken sandwich?"
The best part is he can't defend himself here as we slander him. The other part is the only reason I wish he was here is so that I could point out how the Titans lost to the quarterback they shipped off for nickels on the dollar.
Man,
shout out Malik.
I also wish that Grant Ramey was here so I could point out that Justin Fields is 3-0 as the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Caleb Williams experience after Grant told me for 365 days last year that he could not wait to get rid of Justin Fields for Caleb Williams. And I said, I don't know. I don't trust that Caleb Williams guy with how he acts over at USC. I think I'd rather have Fields, and look at me now.
It's almost like if you take
Grant's still probably on one of his 16 connections coming back from Oklahoma.
Yeah, he took it. I think he took the Oregon.
He's in Alaska right now.
Yeah, I think he took the Oregon Trail. He may have died of dysentery. I don't know. There was seeing just looking at his travel itinerary on paper gave me a headache. Like when he texted like that. That's dude. Really? Why are you just? I know that his whole thing is like, he's got that kind of grumpy vibe a little bit. So it's just kind of like life's a challenge for him. He works out like every day, rain, sleet, snow, whatever. And like, he likes that whole life is hard and everything sucks. And, he's got that vibe about him. But so I wonder if he was just adding that in as like a challenge. Like, can I make 8 connections on one trip because it might save $10? Should I do that? Like, God bless him. Good company, man. But whew, I don't know what is going on there. And also with Fields, it's almost like if you take somebody away from one of the most ridiculous organizations in all of professional sports and you dump them into one of the most stable organizations in all of professional sports.
Could apply to Malik Willis too.
Yeah, things might work out. You put them in a place where they know what they're doing and they're adults most of the time.
Well, let's not give the Steelers too much credit. I love Arthur Smith.
They're never bad. They're never
bad. That's not my point. That's not my point. My point is Matt Canada was atrocious, and even the great Pittsburgh Steelers organization brought the worst offensive coordinator in the history of football, high school, college, NFL. They brought him into their organization, and it took them getting rid of him to stumble into Arthur Smith and then stumble into, thankfully, a calf injury to Russell Wilson, which led to Justin Fields getting on the field.
Well, maybe Fields can go to the Titans next and help them win some football games.
No,
but nonetheless,
like 3 Super Bowls in Pittsburgh. What are you talking about, Wes?
There you go. Before we go on, also we will get to the shout outs because Pat and I went out on Friday night. It was date night for us, and so we went out there and had some beverages, had a good dinner at Bricktown Brewery down there.
We watched Burt win in overtime in Nebraska.
God bless that beautiful, beautiful man. And that's just, I love Burt. I'll never forget that whole Outback Bowl. I think it was Outback Bowl or whatever week it was. We were down there in Florida. They all run together. And I was like, can Butch go coach that team and Burt just come coach at Tennessee? That would be fun. That would be fun. And that was him, right? Was that Pruitt or was that?
I think your Outback Bowls are running together. They played Wisconsin in an Outback Bowl, but that was back when I was in college.
I remember there was a time
I
when
think
they
was
coached
the coach
against
there.
Burt.
He did at Arkansas.
Maybe I'm just completely.
You're thinking of Pat Fitzgerald, so you're thinking of.
No. That was. I know it wasn't Northwestern's football coach. Okay, I just thought. I'll have to go back and look at it now. I might be seriously getting old. But anyways, my point was we went out
46 spins. Is that how old he is?
And yeah, right. 46, 47. Congrats to Juwan Jennings, by the way, one of the originators of the I'm older than I am thing, for proving that sometimes you just got to throw him the damn ball. And it's taken way too long in his NFL career for people to know that. Did you watch what he did in the SEC? Not the most athletic dude on the field. The most competitive guy on the field.
When he has good games, it seems like the ball. When he has great games, though, it seems like the 49ers find ways to screw it up in the end and lose.
Yeah, but yeah, maybe he should play on defense and special teams and do some other things too.
Talk about our date night, Wes.
Yeah, we had date night Friday night. Went out, had a nice dinner, and I will get to these shout outs now and make sure I pull these up correctly. We had Colin, Cole, and Andrew come by and say what's up. So we'll talk to all those guys. And one of them at the time we didn't know his name yet. I just thought he was Steve. He just seemed like a Steve. But then it was like, oh, that's his name. And I thought I was still like, bye, Steve. Because I just, thought that was funny. And then we also ran into a couple of our subscribers, J Love Vols, 2015-105 Vols, also
Coaching Wiz. Shout out Coaching Wiz. He came up. I don't know if I texted him. I don't know if I texted him to you, but he came up and said hey too.
Yes. And then yes, and they were fantastic. All those, it was nice to see everybody. Also, Mark and Elizabeth from Franklin, Tennessee. We did not get permission to share your last name, so I won't do that. But they were very, very nice people. Told some great stories about how long they'd been fans, and just some personal stuff too. They were a really fun group of people to sit down.
Mark was ready for kickoff at about 10:30 on Friday night. He was ready to go.
We had it ended up being a double date sort of with the four of us, and it was nice. They were fun people, and they had some good stories, and it was a nice night. Even though it was still like at midnight, it was still like 90 degrees there. It was like stepping out, like Pat said, stepping out in a hairdryer. But yeah, it was nice to be around those people and have conversations. We really should do that on the road more often. I don't know why we don't.
There were a ton of Tennessee fans there. I don't know the exact count. And there have been some talk that, that was the most away fans that have ever been to a game at Oklahoma. Again, I don't think Iowa State, Kansas State probably doesn't travel a whole lot.
Yeah, I think Tennessee has more fans than like some of those football, like they don't have that many fans like in general that like Tennessee brings to a game. Like they don't have that many fans.
Right. But I mean, I got on my flight Friday morning at like 6 something, and I mean it was 65% people in orange, and then a lot of those people were on my flight from Dallas to Oklahoma City, and then I was driving around campus Friday afternoon. I went to Midway Deli, which is where they mentioned Tom Hart and Jordan Rodgers and those guys.
Yeah, you had a lunch date with Barry Switzer
during the second half of the Kent State game. I can't tell you one thing that happened on the field in the second half of the Kent State game, but I remember those guys talking about places they should go. And so it's this little corner market, hole in the wall deli place, had a really good sandwich. And there were some it was a big deal when some guys from College Game Day were getting some B-roll outside at inside the venue. And at one point, I think they shot a camera at me while I'm stuffing my face with the Cheetos and a sandwich. I'm like, great, this is going to be like an intro.
Well, you tried the world famous. You tried the world famous Norman, Oklahoma Cheetos.
No, they were just regular old Cheetos, Wes. Was that supposed to be a joke? I didn't pick up on it anyway.
Yes.
It was
the grilled chicken sandwich joke. But yes.
But even driving on campus, a lot of orange there already. People, looking at the stadium. They have a row of statues outside the stadium with all the Heisman winners, Billy Sims, all those quarterbacks, Sam Bradford. They had one of Kyler Murray, and I was like, I thought he was left-handed. In his statue, he's right-handed. He is not left-handed. I was wrong. Jason White, Baker Mayfield. I think they got that one pretty accurate. Some of those statues sometimes are not very accurate.
Oh yeah, like the Cristiano Ronaldo one is still my all-time favorite. That was the worst statue I've ever seen.
But they and then as you mentioned, Wes, we walked into this brewery on Friday night, and it's like there were not any other people there that were not Tennessee fans, probably because people walked in there and saw this orange. It was like, yeah, I'm going to leave. So
are these Oklahoma State fans? What the hell?
So, I mean, yeah. And compare that to, I think I saw like 3 Utah fans, on.
Yeah. And they were playing right down the road there. I didn't see
Stillwater. Yeah.
Or Utah fans. Weird.
Right. I think I saw like 3 or 4 of them on the airport on Sunday morning going back. So, ton of Tennessee fans there. I bet a lot of them weren't all that worried about the play calling in the second half. They seemed to be enjoying the celebrations. They seemed to be enjoying the Brew McCoy catches. It wasn't quite the road takeover that LSU was in 2022, but man, there were a lot of them, and we'll see if a lot of them go to Arkansas and go to Georgia. Georgia fans probably aren't going to be giving away those tickets as much. But impressive showing by Tennessee fans, and man, they've got a product to be really excited about this season.
Yeah, they do. That defense, guys, is the defensive line especially. I mean, I still think we talked about this a little bit going into the season, that at least that first couple of days of camp, for me anyways, is when you can kind of tell sometimes, ooh, that guy had a good offseason. Like he looks different than he did last year. And there were a couple of those guys for Tennessee. It was Ethan Davis on offense for me, and then it was Joshua Josephs on defense, who just looked different. Like this dude, remember, there was a lot of talk going in. Is he more talented? Is he better? Is Pierce better? There were some questions there from different analysts and different people on who maybe would be the better player. And obviously, Pierce won that battle. That's fine. Like he's a stud who really played well, I thought, in the game on Saturday. It seemed like to me he did anyway. But Joshua Joseph, man, that dude right now is making some plays. That was he made 2 or 3 just fantastic plays in that game, and he's been really good this season. Tyree West again showed up with another big play like he usually does. They're just rolling dudes in there. That defensive line, guys. We talked about it a lot, but like it's good. And that's perfect. Did I make the perfect analogy just then?
I just talked a whole lot, so I was going to let Ben come back on. So
I love watching this defensive line play. I talked about it leaving Bank of America Stadium as well after Tennessee's win over NC State. I think it's comical just to watch this defensive line in mop-up duty and Jackson Moy just in there as a third stringer. I don't think he's actually a third stringer maybe at this point.
He had a couple of big plays in the game too, yeah.
Yes, and that's what I was getting to is that I loved watching Jackson Moy play on Saturday night at Oklahoma. I mean, if I'm Rodney, like I know I have like 77 different defensive linemen to play, but Jackson Moy, he might be my favorite player on the team. I love the energy. I look, I'll be honest, I love the Samoan aspect to it and the energy that brings.
Yep.
Throwback to Jesse Mahalona. Those are the memories that stirs up. I love watching that guy play because obviously he's awesome. He has incredible strength. His burst off the football is just phenomenal. His use of his hands is phenomenal. He has incredible strength. He's just a fun defensive lineman to watch play. Even if defensive line play isn't your thing or defensive football isn't your thing, you have to have an appreciation for how Jackson Moy plays football. It's just all out all the time. And it's very representative of what he said early last week when he met with the media, that it wasn't about him. The opportunity to go to Oklahoma was cool, but it's all about Tennessee, and essentially said that I'm just ready to go give my all for Tennessee. It's an honor to play for Tennessee and be able to play on this stage and represent Tennessee. And I thought his action on the football field, the way that he played and the effort that he played with, backed that up, and hard not to appreciate that. So it's fun to watch that guy play. I mean, in mop-up duty, what I was getting to is that against NC State, it's the end of the game. It's a complete blowout, and he's tossing dudes out of the club left, right, against these poor NC State offensive linemen that are just ready to get back to Raleigh. And he was kind of doing that to Oklahoma as well. And it obviously just wasn't him. I thought Amari Thomas had some great plays on the interior as well.
He's quicker than he was early in his career.
This might be a hot take, but Joshua Joseph has been Tennessee's best edge rusher this season. And I don't know that James Pierce Jr. has really done anything wrong per se. I think that Pierce maybe isn't playing to the exact level everybody anticipated. And I'm more so speaking about NC State and Oklahoma, not really Kent State or Chattanooga, because he just didn't play a ton of snaps. I don't think it's fair to assess Pierce's play in those games because he played.
He had a sack Saturday. He
played in 15 snaps against Kent State, 10 snaps, I think it was, against Chattanooga. I just don't think that's a very fair assessment. But I think everybody expected Pierce to have more than a half a sack going into October.
He's missed about 3 or 4 where he's been there and just got away. I think he had a couple more where it's like plays that he probably made last year that, he's just not making them. He's getting hands on the quarterback and he's getting away. I think he had 6 pressures per
the pressure numbers are still high. Like he still his pressure percentage is
so he's really getting there. High. He's affecting the game. He just doesn't have the stats.
He's playing really well. And again, my opinion that I stated a couple of moments ago, it wasn't really to downplay Pierce. It was more just about Josh Josephs, and I think he's just playing exceptional football. And it's been more about Josephs maybe elevating his game to where he's more on Pierce's level than Pierce taking a step back and playing down a level, if that makes sense, because the pressure numbers still favor James and him playing well right now. So I hope that opinion made sense. But it's just one guy after the next. And I know you were talking about the defensive line specifically, Wes, but it's just all throughout the defense. Arion Carter, all over the field. Keenan Peely all over the field and delivering some huge hits.
Plays with that
obviously had
nasty streak too.
Yes, he absolutely does. He plays with that nasty streak that Jackson Moy does, and it shows. And my eyes kind of popped out of my head when he delivered that one big hit to the Oklahoma ball carrier. It's just a really fun defense from top to bottom. I mean, we can talk on and on and on. I mean, Jason Jenkins, another guy that's like you forget that he even exists, and then against Oklahoma, he does a great job of shooting the gap after Jackson Ross had an assist to pin Oklahoma deep. And
punters are people too.
Absolutely. Hashtag PU, baby.
Oklahoma's
punter you. Yes. And he is a heck of a weapon for them, given how bad their offense is at the moment. But Jason Jenkins, I mean, you forget that he exists, and then here he comes, shoots the gap, does a great job with his hands, and he's in the backfield to make a great tackle to keep the ball carrier in the end zone and force the safety, and he made some other plays as well. I mean, it's truly amazing how deep this defensive line is, and that's why I really believe that this team, like I said earlier, the defense is a national championship winning caliber defense. I really believe that, and I've always felt that way about the defensive line, but I continue to see things from the linebackers, Patrick, and the secondary, like I talked about earlier with McCoy and Gibson, and you see Will Brooks and Turrentine and Jacoby Thomas, maybe not perfect football, but you see them flying around from sideline to sideline and delivering hits, making plays. This defense is clicking right now, and it has playmakers, it seems, at every level of the defense, is why I believe that it's capable of potentially leading Tennessee to a national championship.
Yeah, Ben, I think all the offseason talk about the secondary, as new as it looked, as unknown as it was, they felt like it was going to be a really athletic group. I think that's proven to be true the first 4 games. And you look at the play that Jacoby Thomas made, I mean, like a missile across the field, and he knocked that running back.
That looked painful,
bench.
Man.
The sideline view was, I mean, and that's how this defense is. I mean, they are a physical bunch. I think they are the team we talked about. You know, they broke NC State. They might have broken Oklahoma. They have the look of a defense that after you play them, you feel it for a couple days, particularly if you're on the offensive line. And so I think there were a few things I wanted to point out. There was a 2-play sequence in the third quarter, guys, where to go back to Ben talking about Jackson Moy, where Jackson Moy tosses the center out of the club and makes a sack. And then on the next play, Jason Jenkins gets through, and he is one of about 3 guys that smother the quarterback. And I made this point before, but like those dudes are third teamers for this defensive line. That is the luxury that these Vols have on the defensive line, that they can roll these guys in here and get that kind of production. There was a play in the second quarter, you kind of touched on it too, Ben, where Keenan Peely closes fast on Jackson Arnold, and he plants him in the ground with a clean, legal, but physical hit. And he kind of stayed down there a little bit. And
He lingered.
He gave Jackson Arnold the business a little bit down there. And Oklahoma fans did not like that. There were some boos. They also might have been booing Omar Norman Lott, who was in the vicinity. And while Peely is laying on top of Jackson Arnold, Norman Lott is kind of taking a couple steps toward the Oklahoma cheerleaders down in that corner.
Yeah, he blew a kiss.
Blowing him some kisses. It was funny to me that Peely got I was reminded of Darrell Taylor against Alabama in 2019, where he like used Mac Jones to help himself get up, and they threw a flag on him.
Yeah, because apparently you're supposed to roll away from.
I don't know, but like, I mean, obviously we were not in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night. Otherwise, they might have flagged it. Peely, Keenan, if you're listening, don't do that to Jalen Milroe, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, be careful.
And so, yeah, I mean, Elijah Simmons. We haven't even talked
about
him.
First play of the game. Because he started like normally one of my my favorite thing in just about every game, one of them, the first snap that you see Big Ten coming onto the field, because it usually is after
you get excited.
Drives. Oh God, yes, because you're a couple drives into the game and the offensive line, they just don't know what's about to happen. In the very first snap, he usually just craters the middle of the line of scrimmage. And Tennessee did the twist this time. They were like, you know what? Instead of doing this at the second or third possession, let's just bring Big Ten in to start the game. And you know what? Just blow up the line of scrimmage. And the very first play, it was going nowhere anyway because the snap was bad, but he just annihilated the guard in front of him and just cratered it.
Any Oklahoma run between the tackles was just completely stuffed, especially if he was in there. He played great. I mean, yeah, they're getting so much production from so many places, and they're having fun doing it too. We talked about Norman Lott. He's got probably too much attitude. Finn. And then there was the false start where
that's where I was going.
Josephs and Eason and
yep.
Whoever else is on there, they're dancing. I mean,
they were jumping up and down, pointing at the offensive lineman, laughing at him because he jumped off sides. I saw that, and I was rolling. I mean, they were jumping up and down in front of it was the left guard, I think 77 maybe, and pointing at him and laughing for the false start.
There was that. They were dancing after some sacks against NC State. I mean, they got a lot of personality in that room and a lot of talent. And it's rare too. We should point out that and Jason Jenkins is a good example of this. I mean, he considered going in the portal in the spring, right? I mean, he never went. I don't think he filed the paperwork. I think that got out that he was going to before he even talked to Tennessee's coaches. And when he did, they're like, you need to come back. There's a lot of guys that are playing just a handful of snaps a game that could be starting somewhere. I mean, Jackson Moyes did start last season at Stanford. And it's unique to have that many guys who are willing to share kind of the load a little bit. And Wes, I think you asked, was it Bryson Eason about it last week or Amari? And I mean, they're all bought into it. That a lot of these guys have been playing together for 3 and 4 years. So Joseph's talking after the game was talking about just how much fun it is to be out there making plays and see guys like Jenkins that have been working for 3 years and now they get a chance to get out there and show what they can do. And it's just a really good culture, and that term gets thrown around a lot, but they've got a great culture in that defensive line room. And I think to Ben's point too, the other levels of the defense are playing off that as well. And they've got everything clicking in the right direction right now. And the Tennessee can, we said going into the season that with this defensive line, they had a chance to win a lot of games. And certainly that's been true the first 4 games of the season. Yeah.
My thought before we close this out by talking about the offensive tackles is I think Jason Jenkins' portal story, like sometimes when you're younger and you're a guy, you get in trouble and you're in a room with your dad and he just kind of stares at you until you admit everything. He just kind of doesn't say anything. He just kind of looks at you and then you're like, okay, I'm sorry. Here's what happened. And I think that's what Rodney Gardner did to Jason Jenkins. I think Jason Jenkins walked into the room to have a meeting with him and Rodney Gardner just looked at him.
This was like 3 weeks too after Rodney just lit up talking about him. He's this blue collar guy, works all the time, no nonsense, great, very coachable. And
I think he just looked
I'm sure Rodney was like, I said all this and you're going to leave.
I think he just sat there quietly in the room, just looking at him until Jenkins was like, I'm sorry, Dad. I mean, Coach, I thought about it, but it was stupid. I'm coming back. Don't worry about it. But yeah, he's a good player, man. And he's also, 6'6", 285 or whatever, and can play on the edge a little bit, play inside. There's a lot that he can do. But I think if you want to get to where Tennessee wants to get to, you got to be as close to a complete team as you can. There are no complete teams really in college football. It's not possible. You can have a team where you don't have like a single like glaring weakness, but there's no like team that's just absolutely better than everybody everywhere across the board, right? We know that. But Tennessee, you want to be the most complete team you can be. And I don't know how Tennessee gets to that point unless the offensive tackle situation gets better. There's reasons to think that it could, right? If I'm Lance Hurd and I have like an ankle or knee injury last week, I'd be glad I didn't play on that field. I'll be honest with you. I would. That would not have been fun. But and then John Campbell gets hurt and tries to come back, and then he's not able to. And Johnson and Dane Davis did what they could, and some plays they did well. They're not bad football players. They're not those other 2 guys, and they need those guys. They need Hurd back. They got to get this figured out or they're going to have to take all this stuff we're talking about with the tight ends in the pass game and how fun that's been. And Dylan Sampson can leak out and do some stuff in the pass game. They're going to have to stay in and block more to help those guys if that's how it's going to be, because they got beat too much. Like Tennessee's tackles in that game, they just got beat too much. You're a tackle, you're going to get beat sometimes. That's part of it. but they can't get beat that much.
Well, with Hurd, I suppose he should be back for Arkansas. If he's not, then it will be, I will say, probably something screwy going on. With Campbell, I mean, we've sort of talked about his situation. I mean, they managed him through camp. He's got a lot of mileage. And he's a 7th year senior, and he's played 7 years of college football, and your body goes through a lot, your knees go through a lot when you're offensive lineman. So that's why you saw him A, manage through camp, and B, I think he played considerably less snaps than the rest of the starters in the first 3 games. I mean, it was almost, I don't say even timeshare with Dane Davis, but that was the position, really the only one where they rotated. Maybe a little bit with Jackson Lampley at left guard in the 2 in the Chattanooga and Kent State games. So look, I think Dane Davis, I think he's played better than he did on Saturday night. I'll put it that way.
He just had a tough night. He just
there was the one sack. I thought, I'm no offensive line expert, but it just looked like bad technique on a move that the guy tried to put on him. He got under him, ducked under him, got to run at the quarterback. The first one, they brought a blitz that caused confusion. And Dylan Sampson, I think, probably takes a share in that as well. That's fair. There was obviously some, Davis was in his set and he was kind of looking like, I'm not sure if I should take this guy or that guy. Obviously Sampson jumped too far forward. There was obviously a pressure. I don't know if it was something Oklahoma hadn't done before. Sometimes the other team makes a great call and a great play. So, I mean, but you go back to some of Dane Davis's other starts and he's not necessarily had this many miscues, right? I mean, the guy's first career start was at Alabama 3 years ago. So, they know he's dependable. I just don't think he played probably his best game. And this is a guy that bleeds Tennessee orange, so I'm sure it's eating at him that he didn't maybe play his best. But, I mean, if you would have said going into the season that, they were going to play half the Oklahoma game with Dane Davis and Larry Johnson as their tackles, you were thinking, that's probably not good. It's probably not going to go well for him, is it? But they did. They held their own. They were on the field during that drive at the end of the first half. They were on the field for a lot of the second half. The best thing you can say about Larry Johnson is there wasn't a big mistake. He didn't give up a sack. He didn't necessarily get beat, give up a tackle for a loss. And for him playing his first meaningful action, I think that's a positive step. And I think playing him 30 plus snaps in 2 of the 3 games before that probably helped him. Mm-hmm. If he had played 20 snaps in 3 games, maybe he gets a little bit of stage fright, but I thought he held his own. But I mean, to the point, that's probably a glass half full look at it. I'll let Ben be Debbie Downer here. I mean, you want your guys healthy, and we talked about that throughout the offseason. The depth on the offensive line was a question mark for this team, and they were able to kind of piece it together and get through it on Saturday night. But in a game, they're going to play some pretty good defenses still coming up, and they're going to play some offenses that are going to be more capable than Oklahoma's, and they're going to need to be able to put up points and not be able to go conservative and manage the game differently because they don't trust the tackles or whatever. They're not going to be able to do that. So this is a big week for a guy like Larry Johnson to build off that. It's a big week for Jesse Perry, a freshman who they seem to really like to be maybe be the next guy in line in case, we know Campbell is going to be sort of a week by week thing. It's just going to be how it is. Again, Hurd should be back. There were obviously,
I thought he would be back for last week.
Right. And you're not the only one. So, they need those guys back, but they also need to, continue to build those contingency plans and work those guys. Obviously, Davis has played a lot. But guys like Larry Johnson, who's second-year player, some of those freshmen behind them, like, Jesse Perry, Bennett Warren was on the trip too. I think those were the only tackles on the travel roster.
That's a big kid, man. That's a big
So, I mean, those are the guys that you need to give a lot of reps to. You can rest Hurd, rest Campbell this week, and give those young guys some work, Ben, and hopefully that if you do need them down the road in a bigger moment, they're able to respond.
As I said earlier in the first segment, I'm very concerned about Tennessee's tackle situation moving forward, and I will keep it brief with my thoughts. I don't want to expand on it too much, quite frankly, but we talk about Tennessee's defensive line and how much fun they're having, how they're playing for one another, how they're playing for Tennessee, things of that nature. I think Tennessee's starting tackles need to adopt more of that mindset than they currently have moving forward in order for that situation to get better. And I say that with recognition that John Campbell Jr., he tore his ACL at Miami.
He missed all of the 21 season with an injury. I don't remember if it was an ACL.
There's a lot of wear and tear there.
There absolutely is. And what I just said about those tackles needing to adopt more of the mindset that the Tennessee defensive line has, I say that with recognition that John Campbell Jr. has his scars from playing college football. I absolutely recognize that. And I still feel the same way that I do, that those tackles need to adopt more of the mindset that the defensive linemen on this football team have in terms of playing for one another, playing for Tennessee, not putting yourself first above everybody else. If they do that, then the sky is the limit for this offense. If they do not do that, in my opinion, if they continue to have the mindset that they currently have, the offense will never reach its potential, because you will get into games down the road that you should win, but at some point, if the tackle position overall produces like it did against Oklahoma, and it is a significant weakness to where you have to completely alter the way you are approaching the game and managing the game, a team that should not beat you will beat you down the road if that situation does not change. And to me, that is the short and sweet of it, quite frankly. And last thing, Wes, is I don't think it was any coincidence that Josh Heupel post game, his comment when asked about Lance Hurd and John Campbell missing time with injury in the game, the last sentence he said was, "I look forward to hopefully having both of those guys back here by the time we get back on the field." And my personal belief is that the hopefully in that sentence was not necessarily in relation to the injuries that they are managing. I don't think it's any coincidence that following the Kent State game, he talked about holding some guys out for the longevity of the season and that they could have played, but they chose not to for the sake of the longevity. I don't think it's any coincidence that anybody who covers Tennessee football all week long leading into the Oklahoma game was saying, we expect Lance Hurd to play. Even when the questionable came out for the first time on Wednesday night, it was still, he's still expected to play. Up until it came out on Thursday night, I think it was Thursday night, maybe it was Friday night, that he was out. Up until that point, it was he's expected to play. It would be a surprise if he does not play, and then all of a sudden he does not play. So I hope that Tennessee can get that situation, that position resolved going forward, because if not, that will be the reason not only the offense doesn't reach its ceiling, Wes, it'll lead to Tennessee as a team not achieving their goals this season. I realize it's one position, but it is one heck of an important position that can control the success for the entire team one way or the other.
It's protecting your franchise. I mean, H's your franchise. So in a lot of ways, he is. So they just have to. I have two. Well, the first thing I'll say is it reminded me a little bit of Cooper Mays last season at Florida, and he was not able to go, and they thought he was going to be able to play, and he decided that he couldn't play. And I still don't know if they lose that game if he plays. I just think your center on the road is such an important. Even with, I think it's a credit to Mays that when a lot of things were breaking down on the outside, like they still kept the thing on the rails. And I think a center like Mays, guard like Spraggins, Boy Karsh, but that helps you. Like those guys help them a lot. But I have two conflicting thoughts on this. One is that they just have to find a way to protect Nico better. They just do. They can't get him hit like that. But the second thing is, and here's why it's conflicting, is that I think in that game on Saturday, if they needed to unlock something for the offense, like if they needed a big play, there was potential there with Nico to keep the ball a couple times. And I think that is one thing that I just said you don't want him to get hit more. And I mean that. These blindside hits and everything, that's not good. You got to get that cleaned up. But there were a couple times where if he had pulled the ball, and maybe the play call didn't let him. Maybe the play call was you're throwing this thing or you're handing it off. Oklahoma was selling out on that. A couple times if he had kept the thing in his gut and just gone, he could have had a big play, I think. And so that's why I have conflicting thoughts on it. Because if they needed to unlock something in that game, I think it was going to be that. But you also don't want him to get hit. So that's where I am on that. Is that I understand. I don't think you coach a game in football out of fear. I don't think you play the game of football with fear. You get hit anytime. It could be a season ender, a career ender. That's part of the business, right? It's a barbaric game. But I think that he can really hurt people that way.
And you saw it there towards the end of the game. I believe it was right before the kneel down, if I'm not mistaken.
He iced the game. He made the safety miss. It was the All-American safety miss, and he
Yes.
could have probably scored if he had kept going. But
smartly slid inbounds, keep the clock moving. So I completely agree with that, Wes. And that's it's funny. I was at the concert last night, and it just happened to pan where Morgan Wallen was singing, and in the background you could see Joey Halsley standing, and he had like a blank stare on his face. And as I sit here in this moment, I'm thinking, okay, in that moment, Joey, I have no idea what he was thinking about, but you could tell he was thinking about something. I bet he was thinking, how much do I want to run Nico Iamaleava this season? Because it's a delicate balance, because his legs, I completely agree. I think it can be a huge weapon. I mean, you saw it a couple of times in that game alone. We saw it against Iowa, of course. You saw the big touchdown run, I think, from 31 yards out against NC State. His legs
could have been 131 because no one was getting near him.
Yeah, I mean, he would run for days like he was Cam Newton in there. But his legs are an absolute weapon. But every time he keeps the football, every time he runs the football, he is theoretically going to take a hit unless he goes out of bounds or slides, which you hope that he does.
But once he gets to the sticks, there's a couple.
And it is football's football. Like, it's part of the game, getting hit and whatnot. But there still is like a smart way that you need to handle that, and walking that fine line of utilizing those legs while also not further risking him to injury, exposing him, I guess, to injury, because it could happen in all sorts of ways. You talked about it. I mean, hits happen, but who knows? I mean, an overzealous linebacker coming in late, hitting in the wrong spot, an aggressive defensive player that wants to send a statement to Tennessee early in a game, and he hits Nico in the wrong spot. You just want to limit those type of risks, and that's a fine balance that I'm sure Joey Halsley and Josh Heupel are going to wrestle with all season long.
And the very last thing for me is, I think Pat wants to say something too, is when Nico talks about the thing, he doesn't want to. The things that Nico talked about after the game, the things that Nico talked about after the game in terms of things that he thinks he could do better, I have to think part of that's one, recognition on just a couple things. One of them would be maybe when to keep it and run a couple times. And then also, once he does that, it's been twice this season where he's kind of gotten out and scrambled and he didn't get to the stick. Like, he could have gotten to the sticks and he didn't. He got like a yard or two short. And I don't think they scored on those drives. Like, that stuff matters. Like, that's going to be something that I think when he watches film, when he figures things out, it's going to be, and I think it's a talking point probably with the coaches too, is, hey, you got to do some math. You got to know where the sticks are. And in some of those situations, take that extra step, then slide, then get the first down. Again, we're talking about a team that's ranked 5th in the country right now. Like, things are going okay. They're going fine, but you want to win a championship. These are the little details that, you go to Athens, you play,
they didn't play perfect football. They played well, but they did not play perfect football.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I'll end this thing the same way I started it. It's nice to get back to a point where you're offering constructive criticism for a really good football team. That's fun. That's what you enjoy doing. It's not fun to turn on the microphone and be like, well, that sucked again. Boy, that sure sucked. That's not, I don't want to do that, but there's been times where we had to. This is not one of those times. It's just saying, listen, that was pretty good, but you know, it wasn't your fastball. If that was your fastball, you're not going to win a championship. If that was not your best fastball, you can still win a championship. So things are good. And we talked about it on the way, on the way back to Oklahoma City after the game, Pat and I did, was that, is this a third of the season or is this a quarter of the season? We don't know. We don't know. That is possible that instead of saying, hey, the season's a third of the way over, maybe it's 25% of the way over. You're back in that conversation now, right?
For the math people, that means the difference in playing 12 games and 16.
Yes. You're now our recent. You're now
Wait,
our.
It was also about.
You're our mathologist now.
It was also about 2 a.m. Central, so we probably weren't making a whole lot of sense.
No, I think you're spot on, Wes. You'd rather be talking about these fair critiques in a win than discussing them in frustrating fashion in a loss. At the end of the day, the conservative nature of it was not fun per se. It's kind of like taking your medicine, like I mentioned earlier. It's like watching a Floyd Mayweather fight. It's not the most entertaining, but at the end of the day, Tennessee picked up a top 15 road win, something they haven't done a lot in recent history, over one of the blue bloods in the sport.
Yes, 7 national titles.
All the storylines going on, Josh Heupel going back, Nico's first true road start, and they handled business. And the final score doesn't dictate it. Oklahoma fans were in our YouTube comments between the time of this recording and going back to when we posted it, posted the no huddle that y'all two recorded on the field, and then the post-game podcast with me and Ryan. And Oklahoma fans were not too thrilled about me titling the post-game podcast that Tennessee thumped Oklahoma. But I do believe.
Wait, this is like full circle moment, Ben.
Stomp. Here it comes.
So the 2014 game, which as Wes and I talked, I have very little recollection of anything from that trip. But that was the infamous game where Wes wrote a headline that Tennessee was stomped.
Sooner stomp balls.
And Tennessee fans were pissed.
Apoplectic.
It was a closest game. Tennessee was a pretty big underdog. Wasn't there like a 100-yard pick six that was not thrown by Jarrett Garantano?
Yeah, there was a big.
I remember the Todd Kelly interception, the TK Jr. interception, and I remember Coleman Thomas having a long night at the office.
Yeah, and again, but I mean, that's
I believe that was Justin Worley game.
Right,
yeah,
he threw
when
a
Oklahoma and Tennessee play, be careful with your verbiage.
Right, and so be careful with your headlines describing the game. But
my point was it was 25-15, and it to me it was a thumping with how Tennessee manhandled Oklahoma in the trenches, mostly on the defensive side of the football for the Vols.
It was 22-3 after 3 quarters, and Oklahoma had 98 yards, and Tennessee.
The score is not indicative of how Tennessee bullied Oklahoma.
Tennessee physically beat the hell out of Oklahoma's offense, and they were probably the more physical team with their own offense too. I mean, with 2 backup tackles, they handed the ball off 8 straight times and went 46 yards down your throats.
Yep. And again, that's
the facts. The facts don't care about your feelings, Oklahoma.
No,
fans.
They don't. And you know what? That's a program that, they got 7 national championships up on that press box. They have an entire park for all of the Heisman Trophy winners that they have in that program's history. It's not just like, here's a statue of one. It's like, here's a billion of them. They've won a lot of them. That's a blue blood. It really is. And that's Tennessee went there and handled business and beat them decisively. And you know what? Could have played a lot better. And that's a good thing. So we'll have plenty of more throughout the week, or at least you two jack wagons will. I will not. I will. Anything that you get from me this week will come at a weird time, and it might smell of gin. Like I don't know. So being across the pond, I'm looking forward to that. Didn't get to take much of a trip this summer. Things didn't work out. So happy to go now.
What are you talking about? You got to go to Omaha for 2 weeks with Ben. That was pretty fun, right?
Yeah, it's luxurious.
Wes going on vacation this week?
Yes, he is.
Is this the first you're hearing of this, Ben?
Yes, he is.
First I'm hearing of this.
Well, you won't hear from me for a while, so enjoy that.
We will slander you on the Thursday podcast.
Yeah, I'm guessing. Yeah, probably. I expect nothing less. I would hope that you do.
No, there will be no slandering because I want to get in and out before an hour and 30 minutes passes.
That's a good point. This has been a very long podcast, but you know what? Tennessee won a big road game and is ranked 5th again in the country, and lots of good things happening. We'll have all of it at GoVols247. As Ben mentioned, there will be a lot of baseball and basketball content as well.
And football. I'm not taking the week off like Wes is.
As Ben wipes his face and just thinking about everything that's going to happen this week. So we'll have all that covered. They will anyways. And they'll be back later in the week with a podcast, and we will have obviously back on the wagon for Arkansas next week. That's a big game at a place where Tennessee historically has had some issues at times. So we will see. But for now, if you're listening on YouTube, or watching on YouTube, this will be the end of it. You'll get the outro if you're listening to the audio. But Ben, Pat, thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks for having me. And I do hope you enjoy your trip, safe travels, and again, enjoy your trip to see a soccer team that has not won a Champions League since Chelsea has. So enjoy watching them play.
They haven't won one ever.
Not ever.
History.
Plenty of Premier League titles, but
Wes, how does it make you feel that I've been a soccer fan? I've very much used that in air quotes. Soccer fan, very, very loose.
Supporter is the term, Ben.
What's that?
Supporter is the term.
The only thing
proving my point. I've been a fan for I've been a supporter. Hold on. Let me button my collar and bring up my dream coupon like I'm a Vanderbilt fan. How does it feel that I've been a supporter for like two seconds, a cup of tea, as they say over there, and I've experienced the Champions League championship, and I was not even watching the Champions League championship because I was covering Tennessee baseball at the SEC tournament in Hoover while the match on the pitch was going on. And you've been watching for 49 and a half years at this point, and have not experienced one.
I don't know. I mean, better than being on a bandwagon, I guess. I don't know. But the only thing that's going to prevent me from actually urinating on Stamford Bridge is that the entire island of England, the United Kingdom, is covered in CCTV. So I would probably be arrested for that. But
let's hope that you do.
I will give them.
All I know is I pick teams that wear blue. You pick teams that wear red, which makes sense because you are Bama West and Bulldog West.
I hate the St. Louis Cardinals, though. Oh, always. Guys, thanks for being here. And y'all have
I'm going to end this hostility by blowing kisses like I'm Omar Norman-Lott.
He wears 55, but he's a 15-yard penalty waiting to happen. He really should just be 15. He really should be.
It's coming. I promise you.
He already got one.
He already got one this year, but he's going to get another one.
A more consequential 15-yard penalty is coming at some point or another.
Hopefully it's more than the one Arion Carter got for roughing the passer, which I don't think the NFL calls that one.
I will say this. You may end with love, Patrick, by blowing kisses like Omar Norman-Lott. But did any of you all see the Instagram story that Omar posted as he was leaving Norman?
No, but now it seems like I need to.
Insert middle finger here towards the football field.
But he's blowing kisses, except for the cheerleaders. He
blowing kisses during the game, giving the middle
saluting
finger
them. One finger salute.
That's us a salute, and I'll give y'all a thumbs up on the way to here. Thanks for being here, guys.
See you, Wes.